بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, tonight we will be continuing the analysis and commentary on the third sermon in Nahjul Balagha, and this is a sermon by the name of Al-Khutbah Shaqshaqiya. This is one of the most important sermons in Nahjul Balagha, and perhaps one of the most it's conflicting. It causes, there are some that disagree with it. There are some that do not like it. It's a controversial sermon for some. And we mentioned the reason why it's controversial, and this is because Amir al-Mu'mineen, rarely did he speak out against the injustice with regards to his rights, with regards to the Khilafah, for the purpose of the Muslim unity, for the purpose of preserving so that factions won't emerge within the Muslim community. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he let go of his own rights, but sometimes he did speak out against the oppression that took place. Of course, we believe that the Imams did speak out, but due to taqiyya, it wasn't transmitted, or there was fear and fear to record these type of narrations. This is a famous sermon that survived. And we mentioned in the previous session the many sources of the sermon, many Sunni sources, which go prior to Al-Sharif al-Radhi, the scholar who compiled Nahjul Balagha. So we mentioned Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. He begins the sermon by talking about how his right was taken away from him. أما والله لقد تقمصها ابن أبي قحافة وإنه ليعلم أن محلي منها محل القطب من الرحى. He says, Ibn Abu Quhafa, meaning Abu Bakr, the son of Abu Quhafa, he wore this, تقمصها, like a qamis. He wore the caliphate, and he knows that I am more worthy of this khilafah. And then he begins to talk about his status. ينحدر عني السيل ولا يرقى إلي الطير فسدلت دونها ثوبا. I am the highest, where the peak of the mountain, where I have the knowledge, I have the pure water, meaning knowledge. فسدلت دونها ثوبا, but I let go of it. وطويت عنها كشحا وطفقت أرتئي بين أن أصول بيد جذاء أو أصبر على طخية عمياء. Because I saw myself, I have two options. Either I fight with a broken hand because I don't have enough supporters, or I be patient in this difficulty. أو أصبر على طخية عمياء يهرم فيها الكبير ويشيب فيها الصغير ويكدح فيها مؤمن حتى يلقى ربه. Now, here we go to the second part, and we continue. He says, I had these two options. Either I fight with a broken hand, or I take the path of patience, which is a very difficult and bitter path. Then he says, فَرَأَيْتُ أَنَّ الصَّبْرَ عَلَى هَاتَ أَحْجَى فَصَبَرْتُ وَفِي الْعَيْنِ قَذَى وَفِي الْحَلْقِ شَجَى أَرَى تُرَاثِيَ نَهْبًا. He says, and I found that endurance thereon was wiser, so I adopted patience, although there was a pricking in the eye and suffocation of mortification in the throat. Meaning that I chose the path of patience because it was the wisest thing to do. It was the wiser thing to do, even though being patient was not easy. Today, some people, they say, oh, how did Ali ibn Abi Talib let go? Amir al-Mu'mineen, he was very patient. He let go of his own right for the right of Islam, in order to see Islam grow as a religion, Islam grow as a faith. And how many people do that? Usually you find people, they're willing to burn down the country, they're willing to burn down everything for the sake of their own power, for the sake of their own authority, as what we're seeing right now playing out in contemporary politics. And you see this going on wherever. Anytime there's a leader, you see that they don't care for others. They would rather burn everyone and let everything go to waste for their own power. Amir al-Mu'mineen was not like that. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he put the interest of Islam and the Quran and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa ahead of himself. فَصَبَرْتُ وَفِي الْعَيْنِ قَذَا. I was patient even though there's something in my eye, pricking in the eye. Can we be patient with something like that? وَفِي الْحَلْقِ شَجَا. And there's something suffocating your throat, the halq. This is called the halq. In the mouth, basically, it's suffocating you. So, أَرَى تُرَاثِي نَهْبًا. And then he says, as I watched the plundering of my inheritance. Now, Amir al-Mu'mineen here, he describes the Khilafah as his inheritance. And this is a very important point where Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, he points out that the Khilafah is something similar to the inheritance. How so? It is the inheritance because the Imam and the Khilafah is passed on to Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. It comes to him, and therefore it is somewhat like an inheritance. We see that this is mentioned in the Quran. When Zakaria, he's praying for his son, he says, Rabbi habli min ladunka waliyan yarithuni wa yarithu min ali Yaqub. Oh Allah, bless me a son who will inherit from me, and he will inherit from Ali Yaqub. What does this mean? This means that he wants the position of imama. He wants the position of khilafah, the position of prophethood, to be passed on to his son. Ibrahim also, قال ومن ذريتي قال لا ينال عهد الظالمين, meaning that Ibrahim, when he's praying for the position of prophethood and imama, he says, I want that to be passed on to my children. So Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, أرى تراثي نهبا. I see that what was passed on to me, it was taken away from me. And this is a very important point, because the Khilafah, it is inherited by Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. And today, when we talk about ownership, the level of ownership, when you own something, there are levels. For example, if you went and you bought something from the store, someone could come and dispute with you, oh, this was a false transaction, this was a wrong transaction. Your ownership would be shaky, your ownership would be questioned until you prove that you actually purchased that item. But scholars say that the strongest form of ownership is inheritance. As soon as your father, your mother, or whoever it is older than you, they pass away, no one has the right to come and question you, to question, why do you have this? You don't need to come and say, oh, I bought it, I had this transaction. No, I inherited it. As soon as they passed away, it passed on to me. Amir al-Mu'mineen here, he's describing the position of imama, ara turathi nahba, something that was my inheritance, it was plundered and it was taken away from me. Inheritance, the one who inherits something, it doesn't require for them to do a transaction. Maybe someone woke up and they realized that they inherited so much. Someone passed away, immediately everything transfers to them. So similarly, with the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, the position of khilafah, the position of leadership and authority, and the person who represents God and speaks on behalf of the Quran and on behalf of religion, that position passed on to Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. So he says, أرى تراثي نهبا. He says, صبرت وفي العين قذى وفي الحلق شجا أرى تراثي نهبا. And then Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes on to describe حتى مضى الأول لسبيله فأدلى بها لابن الخطاب بعده. He says, until first passed on. The first, he took on the Khilafah, and then he passed on, he died, and then he passed it on to the son of Khattab, meaning Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second Khalifa. He passed it on to him. And then Amir al-Mu'mineen, he recited this poem from pre-Islamic Arabia. As we know, the Arabs prior to Islam, they were very proud of their Arabic language, and they were very proud of their poetry. They had the al-Mu'allaqat al-Sab'a, the seven known poems. They used to hang them by the Kaaba, and they were very proud of their poetry. So Amir al-Mu'mineen, sometimes in his own sermon, he places to relay the message, to show his eloquence, he mentions a poem. So he says a poem of a man by the name of Al-A'sha. This man, he was a known poet pre-Islamic times. He says, شَتَّانَ مَا يَوْمِي عَلَى كُورِهَا وَيَوْمُ حَيَّانَ أَخِي جَابِرِي. So now we will explain what Amir al-Mu'mineen was saying and what's the point of this sermon. So he says, أَرَى تُرَاثِي نَهْبَةً, I was patient and I saw that my inheritance was plundered, it was taken away from me. And then he says, حَتَّى مَضَى الْأَوَّلِ لِسَبِيلِهِ فَأَدْلَى بِهَا إِلَى ابْنِ الْخَطَّابِ بَعْدَهُ. The first, he passed on, he died. The first Khalifa, Abu Bakr, he ruled for around 2 years. On his deathbed, he appointed Umar ibn al-Khattab. He appointed him. Now here, this is a very ironic issue, because first of all, Muslims today, when you tell them Amir al-Mu'mineen was chosen by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, the Prophet appointed him on the day of Ghadir, the Prophet appointed him, أَنْتَ مِنِّي بِمَنْزِلَةِ هَارُونَ مِنْ مُوسَى, you are to me like Aaron was to Musa. The Prophet appointed him. When in several occasions in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about how Amir al-Mu'mineen was appointed by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. What the first thing Muslims, the majority, the non-Shia, what do they say? They say, oh, no. The position of imamah, the position of khilafah, it's a position of shura. The Muslims, they are the ones who are supposed to choose the leader. And this is why the Muslims, they chose Abu Bakr in the event of the Saqifa. If that's the case, then how is it that Abu Bakr, he chose Umar ibn al-Khattab? He directly appointed him. So why is it that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi was not able to appoint Amir al-Mu'mineen? Rasulullah, the Prophet of God, he does not have the right to appoint, but Abu Bakr has the right to appoint? What kind of a game is this? How is it that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi can't appoint someone who speaks on his behalf, someone who speaks on behalf of the Quran, but Abu Bakr has the right to appoint Umar ibn al-Khattab? How is that? And they come and they deny. They say, no, Rasulullah did not appoint. Rasulullah never appointed. If Rasulullah didn't appoint, then why did Abu Bakr appoint? Why did Abu Bakr appoint Umar ibn al-Khattab? So here, Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, he comes and he says, حتى مضى الأول إلى سبيله فأدلى بها لابن الخطاب من بعده. He comes and he passes it on to Ibn al-Khattab. So if the first one had no right to take it, how did he hand it over to the second one? Amir al-Mu'mineen saying that even Abu Bakr had no right to come and take the Khilafah, but then he comes and he passed it on. It's like someone that took something by forging, falsely, they took something and then they come and they pass it on. They give it and they give legitimacy. First of all, come and establish that you have legitimacy before you come and you pass it on. So, but we know that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa appointed Amir al-Mu'mineen on the day of Ghadir, 70 days before his death, and he appointed him. من كنت مولاه فهذا علي مولاه اللهم والي من والاه وعادي من عاداه. But Amir al-Mu'mineen, he's discussing how things played out. He says the first one, حتى مضى الأول لسبيله فأدلى بها لابن الخطاب من بعده. And then he recited this poem, the poem of a man by the name of Al-A'sha. شتان ما يومي على كورها ويوم حيان أخي جابري. Basically, the translation of this is my days are now passed on the camel's back in difficulty, while there were days of ease when I enjoyed the company of Jabir's brother Hayyan. So here, this is a pre-Islamic poem where Al-A'sha, this man, he's the poet, Al-A'sha, he's describing the days of difficulty that he's enduring right now. He's riding on a camel's back and he's uncomfortable. He's not happy. But before that, he enjoyed days while he was under the protection of the chief Hayyan. Hayyan was a chief, and he was a respected person. He was honored. Al-A'sha was under his protection. So at those days, before, he was under ease. But once Hayyan passed away, and Hayyan is the brother of Jabir. So Jabir, he's the younger brother of Hayyan. And so he's saying, Shattana ma yawmi ala kuriha. My days are so different. Today, I'm on the camel's back, suffering, I'm uncomfortable. But before, wa yawma Hayyan akhi Jabiri. Now is one day of difficulty, and that day, the day of Hayyan, the brother of Jabir, that was a day where I was honored, the day where I was respected, the day where things were going my way. Here, basically, Amir al-Mu'mineen is trying to say, look at my days now, how I was the first Muslim during the time of Rasulullah. Rasulullah kept appointing me. On the day of Ghadir, he made 100,000 Muslims give bay'ah to me, and Rasulullah used to keep showing respect and honor to me and the Ahl al-Bayt. But now today, this one comes illegitimately, and then he passes it on to the second one, and then the second one, he brings the third one, and Amir al-Mu'mineen is left for over 26 years in his home, and he has no power. Over 24 years, he has no authority and no rule. So he's saying, my days are so different. Look at he's trying to compare and contrast. He's saying, my days during the time of Rasulullah were in one way, and look at my days now. Shattana ma yawmi ala kuriha wa yawma hayyana akhi Jabiri. So Rasulullah sallallahu Amir al-Mu'mineen, he keeps comparing between his days during the time of Rasulullah and his day now. And Amir al-Mu'mineen, why would he say this? Because the Muslims, they turned 180 degrees against the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Today, some people, they come and they say, why do you talk about this? Why do you say this? Because this is the reality, my dear brothers and sisters. We're not making this up. Muslim history was not written by the Shia. Go and read what Tabari says. Go and read what Bukhari says. Go and read what Muslim says. Go and read what Ahmad ibn Hanbal says. Go and read these historians and these narrators of hadith. They will tell you that hours after the death of the Prophet, they turned against the family of Rasulullah. These days, we are commemorating the martyrdom of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. Why? Why is it that Fatima al-Zahra, she was so young, she died very soon after Rasulullah? She sustained injuries. Fire was brought to the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen. They threatened them. They pushed their way into the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen to force him out to give the bay'ah, to give the allegiance to Abu Bakr. So, and when they did that, Amir al-Mu'mineen, they dragged him out of the house. Of course, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he could fight. Some people come and say, how is it? Amir al-Mu'mineen, he was in the battle of Badr, in the battle of Uhud, in the battle of Ahzab, in the battle of Khaybar, he was so strong. Why didn't he fight now? Yes, the difference is those individuals, they were kuffar. Muslims were ordered to fight them. It was in the middle of a battlefield. And right now, it was in the masjid of Rasulullah. Amir al-Mu'mineen does not want to spill blood in the masjid of Rasulullah. That's the answer. Amir al-Mu'mineen does not want to cause division. Does not want to. Islam was a very weak religion. The Rasulullah has just passed away. There were many enemies surrounding the Muslims. They see the day the Prophet died, they're fighting. That's going to make Islam look weak. So they took him, and when they took him, they were dragging Amir al-Mu'mineen. He recited this verse, the same verse that Harun, the Prophet Harun, he said to his brother Moses, he left his people for 40 days. He came back, he saw them, they were worshiping a golden calf. And he had left Harun with them, his brother. So when he comes back, he sees them worshiping the calf. He grabs Harun, his brother, by the beard, and he tells him, oh Harun, what happened? I left for 40 days and they're worshiping a golden calf. These are the Israelites who we saved them from Pharaoh. We gave them food. We gave them so much. After all of these miracles, they're worshiping a calf now? So Harun, what does he say? He says, قَالَ ابْنَ أُمَّ إِنَّ الْقَوْمَ اسْتَضْعَفُونِي وَكَادُوا يَقْتُلُونَنِي. Harun says, oh son of my mother, referring to his brother Musa, tells him, the people, they belittled me. They took me as a weak person and they tried to kill me. So Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali, they were dragging him. They were dragging him in the masjid, and Rasulullah has just been buried. He turned to the grave of Rasulullah and he says, قال ابن إن القوم استضعفوني وكادوا يقتلونني. He says, oh, basically because Rasulullah, he says, and you, Ali, you are to me like Aaron was to Musa. And Rasulullah, he said this knowing that the people of Musa, they did not respect Harun. They did not respect Aaron, even though he was left to fill in the position of Musa when Musa left to the Mount Sinai. Now, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes on. He says, فَيَا عَجَبًا. After Abu Bakr passed it on to Umar, he says, فَيَا عَجَبًا. It is such a strange thing. بينما هو يستقيلها في حياته إذ عقدها لآخر بعد وفاته لشد ما تشطر ضرعيها. He says, how strange is it that during his lifetime, referring to Abu Bakr, he wished to release himself from the caliphate, and he did not want it for himself, and we will talk about this, but at his deathbed, he passes it on to Umar ibn al-Khattab. And then he says, no doubt that they were conspiring with one another. No doubt that these two, they shared its udders strictly among themselves. Now, why would Amir al-Mu'mineen say, فَيَا عَجَبًا بَيْنَمَا هُوَ يَسْتَقِيلُهَا فِي حَيَاتِهِ? Because Abu Bakr, as soon as the power came to him, he went up and he sat on the member of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, and in his first sermon, what does he tell people? He tells them, أَمَّا بَعْدَ أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ فَإِنِّي قَدْ وَلِّيتُ عَلَيْكُمْ وَلَسْتُ بِخَيْرِكُمْ. O people, I have been given authority even though I'm not the best of you. Meaning that there are people amongst you, the Muslims, who are better than me, who are greater than me. So if I do good, support me. If I didn't do good, then help me, support me, and make me do better. So Abu Bakr, he was insecure. Abu Bakr, when several times in his Khilafah, during those 2 years where he was ruling, he would say, I'm not the best. I'm not worthy of this caliphate. On his deathbed, he also says this. He says on his deathbed, Abu Bakr, he says, there are 3 things I wish I hadn't done. There are 3 things I wish I had done. There are 3 things I wish I had asked Rasulullah. This is a known, the will basically, or the last statements of Abu Bakr. He says, فَأَمَّا الثَّلَاثَةَ الَّتِي وَدَدْتُ أَنِّي لَمْ أَفْعَلْهُنْ. As for the 3 things that I wish I did not do, he says, the first, فَوَدَدْتُ أَنِّي لَمْ أَكُنْ كَشَفْتُ بَيْتَ فَاطِمَةَ وَتَرَكْتُهُ. The first thing, on his deathbed, he says, I wish I had not attacked the house of Fatima. I wish I had not ordered for the assault on the house of Fatima. This is the thing he regretted on his deathbed. Meaning that, why did I allow the Muslims to go in and barge and enter into the house of Fatima? And as a result of that entering, Fatima al-Zahra was injured and she had a miscarriage. He says, I wish I had not done that. وَإِنْ أُغْلِقَ عَلَى حَرْبٍ. Even if it would have caused a war, I wish I had not done that. Meaning that what he did was so wrong that he says, even if Bani Hashim, even if there was a group of people that were gathered in the house of Fatima, in the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen, they did not want to give bay'ah, even if that was going to cause war, I should not have attacked the house of Fatima, because Fatima is Fatima. Because Fatima, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَرْضَى لِرْضَى فَاطِمَةَ وَيَغْضَبُ لِغَضَبِهَا. Allah is satisfied by the satisfaction of Fatima, and Allah is angered by the anger of Fatima. This is the first thing. The second, he says, وَوَدَدْتُ أَنِّي يَوْمَ سَقِيفَةِ بَنِي سَاعِدَةَ كُنْتُ قذفت الأمر في عنق أحد الرجلين أبي عبيدة الجراح أو عمر. He says, I wish on the day of Saqifa, the day where they gathered, the day the Prophet died, where they gathered and they gave, and Abu Bakr and Umar gave the allegiance to Abu Bakr. He says, I wish on that day I had given the Khilafah to the 2 men. Who are they? Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah and the second is or Umar ibn al-Khattab. These were the three men that were conspiring. These were the three men that went and they went to the Saqifa. The Saqifa was a place of the Ansar, meaning the people of Medina. They were gathering there. These three men, they heard that there was a gathering going on there. They went there, and then all of the sudden, Umar, he says, no, we give it to Abu Bakr. We give the bay'ah to Abu Bakr. And then Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah, he gives him bay'ah, and then between the Ansar, there was fighting. So the other group, one of the weaker group, Al-Aws, they come and they side with Abu Bakr and they give him bay'ah right away. Then they go to the masjid and they force everyone to give bay'ah. So it was just a small group, a small gathering. But he says, I wish on that day I would have given it to Abu Bakr or Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah. So Abu Bakr, he shows that he says that Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, فَيَا عَجَبًا, it's so strange that بَيْنَمَا هُوَ يَسْتَقِيلُهَا فِي حَيَاتِهِ, during his life, he keeps showing insecurity. He keeps saying, no, I don't want the power. Power does not belong to me. Let other people come and take it. But he's kept it with him. إِذْ عَقَدَهَا لِآخَرَ بَعْدَ وَفَاتِهِ, but then he comes and he passes it on to someone else. How strange is that? You're insecure about the position. You believe that you're not worthy of this position of the Khilafah. How can you come and pass it on to someone else? And then he says, لَشَدَّ مَا تَشَطَّرَ ذَرَعَيْهَا. He says, no doubt these two, they shared its udders strictly among themselves. What are the udders? Dhar is the camel or the cow, when it's feeding, when basically the breast and the udders, when the baby is drinking, sometimes two, they share, they pass it on. They don't let other people drink. Meaning he's trying to say that these two, basically they took control of it. What, I take it and then I give it to you. I take it and I give it to you. They were not willing to allow others to be involved in the decision making. On the day of Saqifa, Umar right away he forced it on Abu Bakr and he tells him, give me your hand, I'm going to give you bay'ah. And then he forced the others to give bay'ah. And then on his deathbed, Abu Bakr, he comes and he says, okay, now it's Umar's turn. And he gives it to Umar. But what's strange, maybe Abu Bakr, he was one of the early Muslims. Umar, he joined Islam 6 years. 6 years into the Ba'tha of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa. Meaning that Rasulullah was preaching the message of Islam for 6 years, and then Umar joined the religion of Islam. And he attempted to kill the Prophet. That's how he came and he joined the religion of Islam. They say he was on a mission to go and kill the Prophet. Then he heard the Prophet and he was guided all of a sudden. So Amir al-Mu'mineen, he's saying that basically this was all premeditated. Abu Bakr, he acts like he doesn't want it. Umar gives it to him, and then on his deathbed, he comes and he passes it on to Umar ibn al-Khattab. Now, Umar ibn al-Khattab, he had a major role on the day of Saqifa. On the day of Saqifa, it was Umar who came and basically tells Abu Bakr, stretch out your hand, and he gives him bay'ah. He forces others. It was Umar who broke the sword of Zubayr. Zubayr, he wanted to fight. He said, no, the Khilafah belongs to Ali ibn Abi Talib. Al-Miqdad, one of the companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen, he pushed him. He pushed him and he said, no. The body of Sa'd ibn Ubadah. Sa'd ibn Ubadah was the head of the Khazraj. He was in the Saqifa, and Sa'd ibn Ubadah was trampled and beat up on the Saqifa. While they were giving bay'ah to Abu Bakr, Sa'd ibn Ubadah, he was laying down bleeding. So, and Umar ibn al-Khattab, he led the assault on the house of Fatima al-Zahra. They tell him, Fatima's in the house. قَالَ وَإِن. He says, so what? And today, some people, they come and they see this as a position of honor and so strong. And he was so caring for the religion that he said, who cares? Even if it's Fatima, we're going to make sure the Khilafah and the matters go the way they're supposed to go. So this is all of these names that I said. These are not according to what I'm saying or Shia scholars are saying. This is according to Ibn Abil Hadid al-Mu'tazili, one of the famous commentators of Nahjul Balagha. Now, there's a very important question. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he's saying Abu Bakr, he was insecure, and throughout his Khilafah, he kept saying, no, I don't want it, give it to someone else. Okay, today some come and say, Imam Ali, after the death of Uthman, Imam Ali, he also came out and he said, they came to him, the Muslims came, and at the end of the sermon of Shaqshaqiya, he's going to talk about that, but we're just gonna, give a brief summary of what happened. They came to him and they tell him, you have to take the Khilafah. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says, go to someone else, don't come to me. So they come and they say, okay, he's talking about Abu Bakr, he was insecure and he didn't want it. Imam Ali, he did the same thing. He tells them, go to someone else, don't give me the Khilafah. Here, there's a very important difference. The difference is Imam Ali alayhi salam, first of all, he didn't say, I am unworthy of the Khilafah. No, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he always claimed that he had the knowledge. Even during the Khilafah of Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman, he was the knowledgeable one. He was Bab Madinat Ilm Rasulullah. He was the door of the gate of the city of knowledge of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa. And the others, they used to come to him seeking knowledge because they knew he had the knowledge of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he wasn't insecure. Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he tells them, don't come to me, because he knows he's going to bring reforms. He knows he's going to bring changes. And he tells them, listen, if you're not going to handle the changes that I make, then don't come and stretch your hand out and give me bay'ah, because it's going to be a difficult path. It's like, you hire someone, you bring someone to clean up a mess that the president before him had, or the leader before him they created. So they come and they tell him, we want you to come and take the position. He says, no. I won't take the position because you guys are not going to be able to handle the reforms that I'm going to bring. I'm going to bring major changes. People are not going to like that. And this is exactly what happened with Imam Ali. Imam Ali, the people who begged him to take the Khilafah, they were some of the first who refused and they turned against him. Zubayr, that same man that we just said his name, on the day of Saqifah, he took out his sword to fight in defense of Imam Ali. As Zubayr, he waged a war against Imam Ali in the Battle of Jamal. It was him and Talha and Aisha. They waged a war against Imam Ali. Why? Because now, okay, our buddy, our guy, he made it in the government. He's the chief, he's the leader, he's the Khalifa. Now come and give me position of power. Give me this, give me that. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, no, I'm going to rule equally. Even his own brother Aqil, he did not treat him differently. He didn't have nepotism. Whereas the other Khulafa, the others, especially Uthman, he did practice nepotism. He brought all of Bani Umayyah into power. So Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he's saying go to someone else, he's not telling them, I'm not worthy. He's telling them, if you can't handle the changes that I'm going to bring, then it's going to be problematic. The only way I'll take it is if you accept the path that I'm going to be on. So they tell him, yes, we accept it. But later on, many of them, they turned against Amir al-Mu'mineen because it was a very difficult path that he put them on. Being on the straight path, being on the haqq is not easy. This is why Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, the haqq, being on the straight path, left me with no friends. Because everyone left Ali ibn Abi Talib because of their dunya, materialistic. Muawiyah was giving money here and there. A lot of people, they say, you know what, I need my money. Let me just go and make money. I need to feed myself. I need to feed the family. And they left Imam Ali alayhi salam. Then Amir al-Mu'mineen, after he says, فَيَا عَجَبًا بَيْنَمَا هُوَ يَسْتَقِيلُهَا فِي حَيَاتِهِ إِذْ عَقَدَهَا لِلْآخِرَ بَعْدَ وَفَاتِهِ لَشَدَّ مَا تَشَطَّرَ ضَرْعَيْهَا. Then he goes on to, now he says, Abu Bakr, he passed it on to Umar. He passed it on, even though he was insecure, but he passed it on because they were conspiring with one another. They were teaming up from the beginning with one another. Now he describes how Umar's reign was, how it was when Umar ruled. Now Umar ruled for a longer period of time. And he says it was a very difficult, very rough, very, so many mistakes were made and so many disasters were caused during his reign, during his power, during his authority. He says, فَصَيَّرَهَا فِي حَوْزَةٍ خَشْنَاء يغلظ كلمها ويخشن مسها ويكثر العثار فيها والاعتذار منها فصاحبها كراكب الصعبة إن أشنق لها خرم وإن أسلس لها تقحم فمني الناس لعمر الله بخبط وشماس وتلون واعتراض. He says, this one, meaning Umar ibn al-Khattab, he put the caliphate in a tough enclosure where the utterance was haughty and the touch was rough. Mistakes were in plenty, and so also the excuses therefore. One in contact with it was like the rider of an unruly camel. If he pulled up its rein, the very nostril would be slit. But if he let it loose, he would be thrown. Consequently, by Allah, people got involved in recklessness, wickedness, unsteadiness, and deviation. So basically, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he describes the leadership and the akhlaq and the way Umar ruled in 4 ways, and the aftermath, the consequences, are also in 4 ways. Inshallah, we will talk about them. So the description, he says, the first is فَصَيَّرَهَا فِي حَوْزَةٍ خَشْنَاء, meaning he was khashan. You know, when you have something, your clothes, when something is rough, you call that khashan, meaning he was very rough with people. Someone who's delivering the religion, someone who's being the person who's delivering and being the Khalifa of Rasulullah, who was a mercy to mankind. You're not supposed to be rough. You're supposed to be kind. You're supposed to be easygoing with people. That's how you attract people to faith. That's how all of the prophets did. Today, some people look at the way ISIS, look at the way Taliban, look at the way the terrorists in Pakistan and Iraq and all over wherever they are, they come and they come very rough. They're very rude. They think that that's how you pass on religion. Amir al-Mu'min describes Umar ibn al-Khattab in that way. He says, فَصَيَّرَهَا فِي حَوْزَةٍ خَشْنَاء. It was a very tough enclosure. يَغْلُظُ كَلْمُهَا. The utterance was haughty, meaning he was very tempered, very rude. He wouldn't allow people to give their own opinion. He wouldn't allow people to voice themselves. You know, he had a stick in his hand, and he used to beat people with it. Even Abu Huraira, the man who has narrated so many thousands of narrations, go and read, you know, Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, they keep narrating from Abu Huraira. Abu Huraira, he says, I brought 2 bags of hadith, meaning I brought so much, I could have brought 2 more bags, but Umar ibn al-Khattab used to beat me and he used to tell me you're a liar. Have you read anywhere where Rasulullah beat someone? Rasulullah took a stick and he started hitting someone? It's not the way you pass religion. He says, يَغْلُظُ كَلْمُهَا وَيَخْشِنُ مَسُّهَا, and the touch was rough, meaning very violent. In words and vocalization, he was very rough, and in words, he was violent. He used to beat people up. People were scared of him. They say that the sister of Abu Bakr, when Abu Bakr died, she was crying. She was crying for the death of her brother. He took out the stick and he started beating her. So today, why is it that some are surprised when we say he slapped Fatima al-Zahra? Because that's what happened, according to narrations. That's what some narrations tell us. That now, of course, not everyone narrates these narrations, but this is something that's there. So here, and then he says, and the وَيَكْثُرُ الْعِثَارَ فِيهَا, the mistakes were many, the mistakes were plenty, and also the excuses, therefore, were also plenty. So today, unfortunately, many Muslims, they come and they refuse to take a closer analysis of what really happened. Why? Because during the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, the Muslim land grew exponentially. The Muslims, they were in the Arabian Peninsula. During the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, they took over Persia and they took over Iraq. So when they talk about the reign of Umar ibn al-Khattab, they say, oh, it was a time of, you know, the Muslim state grew so big. That today, when we have a materialistic mindset, that's how we judge people. That's what history records. Right now, when they talk about Napoleon, for example, they don't come and look at his attitude and what he did and the changes. They come and they say, oh, he grew the empire. That's what people look at right now. Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying, no, we're not talking about building an empire. We're talking about establishing the religion of God and the message of God. And it's not about quantity growing the Muslim land. What's the point of growing the Muslim land when Islam is not even there? When the real Islam, the quality Islam is not there, but quantity Islam is there. So he says many problems grew. And here, Amir al-Mu'mineen, basically, he's trying to say that the Khilafah is not for everyone. You have to be equipped. You have to be someone who has the knowledge, who has the akhlaq, who has the virtues, who has the demeanor, someone who is appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If someone's not appointed by Allah, then many problems are going to emerge. One of our great scholars, and I recommend you all read his book. The scholar, his name is Sayyid Abdul Hussein Sharaf ad-Din. And his book, it's called An-Nas wal-Ijtihad. An-Nas wal-Ijtihad. The text and interpretation. And you could find this on alislam.org, translated into English. You could find it. I looked at it today. So, An-Nas wal-Ijtihad, interpretation and text and interpretation. In it, he explains how many times they went against the Nas, against the direct text, the direct order, these individuals who came after Rasulullah, and they imposed their own interpretation on Islam. They brought their own changes, and this is how the path began to deviate. This is how today you ask Muslims, how did the Prophet pray? Some say he had his hands down, some say he had his hands folded. The Prophet prayed every day in front of the Muslims. How is it that today we Muslims, we don't know how the Prophet prayed? Did he pray with his hands down, or did he have his hands folded? This is something that everyone should know for sure. This is not something that we should be disagreed upon. But there's disagreements. Why? Because there were changes. There were individuals who came and they started adding. Who added the folding of the hands? Umar ibn al-Khattab. Who added the Taraweeh prayer? Umar ibn al-Khattab. Who removed the mut'at al-Hajj and mut'at of the marriage? Umar ibn al-Khattab. In fact, Sayyid Abdul Hussein Sharaf ad-Din, he mentions over 70 deviations from the Nas, from the way that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa had. Only Umar ibn al-Khattab. Abu Bakr had, Uthman had, but most of them, they took place during the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab. And then he says, فَصَاحِبُهَا كَرَاكِبِ الصَّعْبَةِ إِنْ أَشْنَقَ لَهَا خَرَمْ وَإِنْ أَسْلَسَ لَهَا تَقَحَّمْ. He says the one who was leading the Khilafah, the one who's leading the Muslims, the one in contact with it was like the rider of an unruly camel. If he pulled up its rein, the very nostril would slit. But if he let it loose, he would be thrown. Basically, Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying that he had this, describing the second Khalifa, he's saying he was in such a way where if you bump heads with him, it's going to cause bloodshed and it's going to cause a disaster. And if you let go of him and you let him take the way he wants, it's also going to be a disaster, a catastrophe of deviation. He says, what are you supposed to do with someone like this? He describes it as a camel. If you pull too hard, the nostrils would rip, and it would damage the camel. You know, when they pull it, it has something in its nostril. And he says, if you let go of it, this one, it's disobedient. It goes this way and that way, and it doesn't stay on the straight path. This is how Amir al-Mu'mineen is describing. And keep in mind, they were Arabs. They were used to camels. They traveled with camels. So Amir al-Mu'mineen gives that example. Say, for example, if the Imam was at our time, he would be talking about, for example, Teslas and Ferraris and these type of things, probably. So here, Amir al-Mu'mineen, this is what he's saying. But of course, today, and not today, you know, Ibn Abil Hadid, the Sunni scholar who has an interpretation on Nahjul Balagha, they come and they interpret the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen to not refer to Umar ibn al-Khattab, but rather refer to the Khilafah. And he makes it, he doesn't see it as a polemic against Umar ibn al-Khattab, but rather a description of the Khilafah. Meaning Imam Ali is saying this Khilafah is very difficult, it's very rough. My days during the time of not having Khilafah are different from my days now that I'm having Khilafah, that poem part. And right now he says, having the Khilafah is difficult, meaning anyone who takes on the position of Khilafah, they have to endure this difficult. Whereas Amir al-Mu'mineen is not talking about Khilafah. Amir al-Mu'mineen is talking about those who came before him. And then he says, فَمُنِيَ النَّاسِ لَعَمْرُ اللَّهِ بِخَبْطٍ وَشِمَاسٍ وَتَلَوُّنٌ وَاعْتِرَاضٍ. He says 4 things happened to In the translation, he says, consequently, by Allah, people got involved in recklessness, wickedness, unsteadiness, and deviation. Meaning, khabt means basically description of a camel that goes out of the path, unguided. Shamas means anarchy, chaos. Talawwan meaning that people are not, they don't have a principle, they don't have a firm identity. Talawwan meaning changing colors. They're not firm, riding the bandwagon, not firm in their faith and their identity, because the leader is not firm. So therefore, people are going to be deviated. Wa'tirad, rejecting the truth and going astray, deviation. So basically, as a result of what happened, as a result of who he was rude, he was tempered, he was violent, he used to assault and makes many errors, many mistakes, many apologies here and there. He says, as a result of that, people were unguided, there was anarchy, there was no firm identity, and people were losing their faith. He says, فَصَبَرْتُ عَلَى طُولِ الْمُدَّةِ وَشِدَّةِ الْمِحْنَةِ. Nevertheless, I remained patient, despite the length of period, meaning the period of Umar ibn al-Khattab was longer than Abu Bakr, and the stiffness of trial. Then later on, he moves on to talk about how Uthman came to power. And that was also a major disaster, a major catastrophe in the way Uthman came to power. Inshallah, we will cover that in the next session. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi at-tahirin.